Pam Bondi stepped into the courtroom with a presence that commanded attention. The sound of her heels echoed through the marble halls as she walked with purpose. She had faced many battles in her career, but this one felt different. There was an electric charge in the air that couldn't be ignored. The case she was about to face was big, and the stakes were higher than ever. The room filled with the murmur of voices, all awaiting the start of the trial. Pam's eyes were locked forward, focused on the task ahead. She could feel the weight of the opposition. The defense team, led by Charles Merritt, an attorney known for his smarmy confidence and his old money connections. And standing at the front of the courtroom was the judge, Judge Richard Calloway. Pam had faced him before, and she knew that this time he was going to be a challenge. Judge Calloway's reputation was well known. He was a tough cookie who didn't suffer fools, and he had a way of belittling attorneys who didn't meet his standards. Pam could already sense the skepticism in his eyes as he glanced at her. The moment she entered, the judge made his usual remark, an almost mocking acknowledgement of her presence. But Pam wasn't here to play games. She was here to win. As Pam set her leather-bound file on the plaintiff's table with precision, the opposing counsel, Charles Merritt, adjusted his silk tie. He gave her a glance, but barely acknowledged her. He was too busy trying to impress the judge with his practiced, polished demeanor. He had one thing on his mind: winning this case at any cost. But Pam? She wasn't intimidated. The jury began filing in, each person taking their seat, their faces a mixture of curiosity and indifference. Some seemed to be paying attention, while others looked like they were just going through the motions. But Pam wasn't fooled by appearances. She knew exactly what kind of jury she was dealing with, and she wasn't going to let them get away with anything. She needed them on her side, and she wasn't going to back down until they were. Judge Calloway finally called the court to order. The air in the room was thick with anticipation as he glanced over at Pam. "Miss Bondi, I trust you're ready to proceed." His tone was casual, almost dismissive. It was as if he already knew how this was going to go. Pam stood up, her back straight, her eyes unwavering. "Yes, Your Honor," she responded, her voice steady. But Judge Calloway wasn't finished yet. He leaned forward, a small smile playing on his lips as he muttered, "Let's hope this doesn't turn into a circus." He chuckled to himself, clearly not taking her seriously. The courtroom erupted into small laughter. But Pam didn't flinch. She didn't react. She was used to being underestimated. She simply opened her case file and began reading her notes with the calm confidence that had gotten her this far. Pam's mind was sharp, and she wasn't going to let Judge Calloway's mockery rattle her. She had come to this courtroom for a reason: to hold a powerful corporation accountable for its fraudulent practices. This wasn't just a case about paperwork or technicalities. It was about people's lives. And Pam wasn't about to let anyone forget that. Please like and subscribe. Let's continue. She stood tall and addressed the court, her voice ringing out clearly. "Your Honor, this case isn't just about legalese. It's about trust. The trust that was violated when this corporation intentionally misled thousands of innocent people. People who believed in them. People who trusted them with their hard-earned money." Judge Calloway, clearly irritated by her boldness, raised his hand, cutting her off. "Miss Bondi, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We're not in a courtroom for a performance. We're here to address a preliminary motion, not a grand speech." The laughter in the room was more restrained this time, but Pam could sense it. It was condescension in its purest form. Charles Merritt, sitting across the aisle, leaned back in his chair with a smug grin on his face. He was already sure he had the upper hand. After all, how could anyone, especially someone like Pam, challenge a respected financial institution with so many resources and connections? Pam remained unfazed. She clasped her hands behind her back, meeting Judge Calloway's eyes with unwavering confidence. "I understand, Your Honor," she said calmly, "but the facts speak for themselves." She pulled out a set of documents, and her eyes flickered over the jury. She could see some of them leaning forward now, sensing that something important was about to happen. "The defendant knowingly misled thousands of people," Pam continued, her voice rising just slightly with determination. "They promised services they had no intention of delivering, and they knew it." Judge Calloway seemed momentarily caught off guard by the intensity in her voice. He flipped through his papers and sighed, clearly not expecting such a direct confrontation. "That's quite an accusation, Miss Bondi," he said, his voice dripping with skepticism. "But I assume you can back it up." Pam met his gaze squarely. "I can, and I will," she replied confidently, knowing this was the moment to drive the point home. Judge Calloway gave a small, dismissive chuckle and turned to the defense. "Let's hear from the defense, shall we?" He gestured toward Charles Merritt, who had been waiting patiently for his turn to speak. Merritt rose with a polished smile and adjusted his tie. "Your Honor," he began, oozing with the confidence of someone who believed he was about to win the case, "this entire case is built on emotional appeals rather than facts. My client, a respected financial institution, has followed all the necessary guidelines. If some people feel misled, that's unfortunate, but that hardly constitutes fraud." The defense lawyer leaned on the desk, his tone becoming theatrical. "What we have here, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is a classic case of a plaintiff trying to destroy a successful company because they don't like how business is done. There is no fraud, no deception, just a simple misunderstanding." Judge Calloway nodded, appearing somewhat satisfied with Merritt's explanation. He turned back toward Pam, a small smile on his face as he addressed her. "Miss Bondi, are we really going to waste the court's time over a misunderstanding?" The comment landed like a slap to the face. But Pam wasn't rattled. She let the silence stretch out, making everyone in the courtroom feel uncomfortable. The jury's eyes darted between the defense and Pam, the tension rising with every passing second. Pam knew she had to take control of the room, and she was about to do it. Pam stood up and walked confidently toward the judge's bench, her heels clicking against the floor with every step. The room was deathly silent as she pulled a single document from her file and placed it in front of Judge Calloway. The air seemed to thicken with anticipation. Judge Calloway adjusted his glasses, his gaze flicking from the paper to Pam. For the first time, his smirk faded just a little. Pam turned toward the jury and addressed them directly. "What Mr. Merritt calls a misunderstanding is actually part of a deliberate strategy, one designed to deceive customers into signing contracts they don't understand." She gestured toward another stack of files on her desk. "And I have the evidence to prove it." The room seemed to shift as Pam's words sank in. The jury was no longer distracted. Even Merritt was paying attention now. Judge Calloway's expression was no longer one of amusement. It was one of careful consideration. The tension in the courtroom had changed dramatically, and Pam could feel it in the pit of her stomach. "This was her moment," Pam continued, her voice calm and confident. "These contracts were designed with one thing in mind: deception. They misled customers into believing they were signing up for low-risk investments, while in reality, they were being placed in high-risk ventures that could and did destroy their financial security." Pam took a slow breath, and turned her attention back to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what we are witnessing here isn't just a case of bad business practices. This is a deliberate effort to deceive. This company took advantage of vulnerable people, retirees, families, small business owners, people who trusted them with everything they had. And in return, they were left penniless, their dreams shattered, all because a few executives wanted to line their own pockets. But now, they were seeing the truth. They were beginning to understand the full scope of the corruption Pam was uncovering. Pam's voice grew even stronger as she continued, her words slicing through the tension in the room. These executives didn't just mislead people, they exploited them. They built an empire on the suffering of others, and if we allow that to go unpunished, we are sending the message that such behavior is acceptable, but it's not, and it's up to you to make sure it never happens again. As Pam spoke, she could feel a shift in the room. The jury was no longer just listening, they were thinking, processing, questioning everything they thought they knew. Even Judge Calloway, who had once been dismissive, now had a different expression on his face. He wasn't smiling anymore, wasn't mocking her. Instead, there was a flicker of respect in his eyes. Pam had done what many thought was impossible. She had made him see the truth. Pam turned back to the defense one last time. "Mr. Merritt," she said, her voice sharp, "you can try to spin your narrative. You can continue to claim that this was just a misunderstanding, but the truth is clear, and no amount of legal jargon can change that. The facts are irrefutable. The defendants lied. They deceived, and it's time for them to pay for the harm they've caused." The courtroom held its breath as Pam finished her statement, her voice echoing in the silence. Merritt opened his mouth, but no words came out. He had no response. And in that moment, Pam Bondi knew. She had won. The case wasn't over yet, but she had already delivered a blow that would be impossible to recover from. With that, Pam stood tall, her heart pounding in her chest. She had done what no one thought possible. She had taken on the most powerful corrupt forces in the room and shown them exactly who was in charge. The judge, still silent, motioned for the jury to deliberate. And as the room began to buzz with whispers, Pam knew the battle wasn't over. But the war was far from lost. This was only the beginning. And in that moment, everyone in that courtroom understood. Underestimating Pam Bondi had been the biggest mistake they could have ever made. She flipped to another page, her voice unwavering. Section 31A explicitly states that the company denies liability for market-driven losses. But what it doesn't tell you is that my client's money wasn't even invested in the market. Instead, it was funneled into high-risk private ventures that benefited only the executives while the customers were left in the dark. A murmur of disbelief rippled through the courtroom. The jury was looking at each other, eyes wide with shock. The power was shifting in the room, and Pam was in control. She had just delivered a blow that left everyone, especially the defense, reeling. Pam set the document down with precision, her gaze never leaving Judge Calloway. "This isn't business," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "This is theft." The room was silent for a moment, and then the applause began. It wasn't loud, but it was real. The jury was on edge, visibly moved by what Pam had just revealed. Even the court reporter paused, unsure of what to do next. Judge Calloway, for the first time, seemed at a loss for words. Judge Calloway finally spoke, but his words were slow, measured. "Miss Bondi," he said, adjusting his glasses, "I'm not sure this is enough to convince me of fraud. We're talking about contractual language. not criminal intent. He looked down at the paper in front of him, trying to keep his composure. Pam's eyes never wavered. She knew exactly what he was trying to do: dismiss the case, minimize the importance of what she had just shown. But Pam was ready for this. She had anticipated every move. "I respectfully disagree, Your Honor," Pam replied coolly. "This isn't about legal semantics, it's about trust. The trust these people placed in this company, and the betrayal of that trust when the company knowingly deceived them." The room was hanging on her every word. Pam could feel the weight of the moment. Judge Calloway, still trying to regain control of the room, eyed Pam carefully, but she wasn't done yet. Pam stood tall, her voice unwavering. "These contracts weren't mistakes, Your Honor. They were deliberate, calculated efforts to mislead people, to manipulate them into signing away their financial futures, and I can prove it." If you enjoyed this, please like, comment, and subscribe to keep up with the latest. Your support means everything.